Now imagine you are a C-suite executive for some large multi-million-dollar company. You've had a stressful day because work happens, and now it's time for you to go home. After a day of being barraged with information and problems and sorting through all that stuff, you want a quiet, serene space for you to relax and unwind in as you waft all the way home. Now, for that wafting serenity, there is perhaps nothing better than this, the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Now, this is the E200 Avantgarde facelift, and so to talk about the facelift, obviously we have to start at the face. Now, at the front, we now get a new 6-point grille, which is unique to the Avantgarde. The E300 AMG line gets a different grille. Now, this is Mercedes-Benz's way of differentiating the models and the variants a little bit more. You do get a new set of headlights, which are unfortunately of a design that I'm not quite in favor with. In fact, the whole front end, I'm not quite in favor with. There's something about this that just looks a little bit low rent. However, the bumper treatment I do like, with the chrome strip that goes all the way across, because it makes the E-Class look very elegant. Now, down the side, you now get a new design of alloy wheels wrapped in Michelin Primacy 3 tires, and the design is understated, to say the least. From a distance, it doesn't actually look that bad, although my video editor believes that as you get closer, it seems to sort of ruin the effect a little bit. I disagree. I think this is what an E-Class ought to look like. Now, down the side, there are very few changes because obviously this is just a facelift. So the sheet metal down the side is very similar, and so is the roofline. There are very few changes to report here. That said, though, the proportion of the E-Class is something that's quite noteworthy. A lot of people believe that the S is too long and the C is too short, and this is the perfect sort of ratio. I think that it looks very stately, which is exactly what you'd want from an E-Class, right? Now, at the rear, the changes are a little bit more extensive. So gone is the one-piece sort of vertical-oriented taillights, and now you get a two-piece landscape-oriented taillight, again to emphasize the width of the car. Now, this was actually done for the facelift without actually changing the sheet metal of the fender, which is very, very remarkable. What they did was they actually raised the bumper line in order to meet the new tail lights in order to give it that nice smooth effect here. There are, again, very few changes around the rear, but the Avantgarde model does get a unique lower rear bumper treatment, again, to differentiate it as a entry-level model. Now, it is worth noting that I'm not a fan of what they've done back here. It's not that it looks bad. This looks very similar to what you get from the rest of the Mercedes-Benz lineup. The trouble is that I liked the taillights from the pre-facelift model, which had this sort of stardust effect on it, and it made it look really special. And when you add to that the sort of graceful fade in and fade out that you get when you lock and unlock the car, it made the car look really special. These taillights, unfortunately to me, look very similar to what you get in the Mercedes-Benz A-Class Saloon, and that's certainly not something that you want to level at a car at this price point. Now, talking about the E-Class, obviously this is a car that you drive yourself. As much as maybe you are driven in. So as a result, practicality can be quite important, particularly if you're hauling families or buddies to the golf course. And so you look at the boot, which unfortunately is not powered, it's merely spring-loaded, and you can see that there is a lot of space in here. You can definitely pack a whole bunch of golf clubs in here, or instead a lot of luggage for a long-distance trip. It is worth noting, however, that the boot does sort of rise a little bit. The boot floor rises ever so slightly, and the seats are foldable 40-20-40 should you need to maximize cargo room in your E-Class. The E-Class is meant to be versatile, and so that is evident in the boot space. Now, being a Mercedes-Benz, obviously you get the little hooks here in order for you to pull, and that will fold the rear seats down. You also get a teeny tiny little bit of space under the boot floor, and as per usual with any Mercedes-Benz, you get the box. I'm not sure what this is for, but every Mercedes-Benz car now, almost every Mercedes-Benz car that I've ever driven comes with one of these, which is great for stuff. Anyway, enough about the rather odd box. Let's go and talk about what's going on the inside, because this E-Class really does impress in there. Now, inside the Mercedes-Benz E-Class, I think is its party piece. If you ask me, there are very few cars that look quite this good at this price point. So obviously the highlight in here is the new MBUX system, or Mercedes-Benz user interface, displayed on these two 10.25-inch screens. Now the center one is a touchscreen, obviously the driver's instrumentation is not, and you can use this both by touch, with the touchpad here, or with the touchpad here. And the center touchpad even comes with haptic feedback, which means that you really know all of the inputs that you're making into the MBUX system. Now, of course, underneath that is this gorgeous interior with all of these wide elements, again, to sort of emphasize the space or the sensation of space within this car. The E-Class, of course, comes with 4 aircon vents in the middle and 2 on the side, obviously, and you do get dual zone climate control in this E200. Now, because this is an E200, unfortunately you only get this sort of brushed aluminium trim up here, but you do at least get black open pore ash wood trim down in the center console. This of course replaces the piano black that used to be available in this model, but now that is no more, and that is a change that I certainly appreciate. Now, you get a couple of cup holders here, you get a USB port and a power socket here, and a little space here which they say is not an ashtray because smoking is so last century. However, all the USB ports in this car are USB-C, so make sure that you have a C to C cable or a C to Lightning cable if you're an iPhone user. And of course, this car does come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but to that end, the Android Auto does not take up the entirety of the screen, which looks a little bit weird. Now, another improvement is also in terms of the materials. Now, the E-Class has always been built very well, and it's always been very careful with its selection of materials, so everything that you feel is soft and very well put together. But that said, previously this panel here used to feel like cheap plastic, but now no more. It is also wrapped in leather, which feels kind of nice, but this button feels a little bit. Now, of course, you get even more storage in here and another USB port, and in the back you get 2 more USB ports underneath the central aircon vents. Now, like I said earlier, this is dual zone climate control, so you don't have any aircon controls back there, and also the E300 comes with vents on the B pillar, which would make rear passengers feel a little bit more comfortable. It's also worth noting that this interior is done in black faux leather. This is article man-made leather and not actual leather. If you want real leather that came from a cow, you will need an E300 AMG-LINE instead. Now, because it's very hot and I can't be asked to move, I'm going to talk about the back end from in here. The back seats are very, very comfortable, as expected in an E-Class. This is perhaps the best car to be hauling people in the back, slightly better than the BMW 5 Series and definitely better than the Jaguar XF. It is worth noting, however, that of course, because this is the E200, like I said earlier, you don't get extra climate control vents on the B pillars or climate controls. And the E200 also does not get the panoramic sunroof that you get in the E300, which means that back there it can feel a little bit dark. But rear passengers do at least enjoy things like sun blinds on the sides, which are manual, and electric roller blind for the rear. Now, let's talk about the drive, because I think that's my favorite part about this car. Now, driving the new Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Now, again, it's worth pointing out this is just the E200 Avantgarde. We haven't yet sampled the E300 AMG-LINE, but we believe that we'll be doing so in the near future. Now, being the E200 Avantgarde, it has the same 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine paired to a 9-speed G-tronic automatic gearbox, sending power to the rear wheels. But for the E200, this engine has been down-tuned slightly to produce a little under 200 horsepower and about 300 Newton meters of torque. The specifics will be put in some graphics as I speak. Now, obviously this is a little bit less than the E300, but honestly, I don't think anyone's going to be choosing between the E200 and E300 based on performance. Yes, the horsepower in this car may be slightly lackluster. My co-presenter Shasha's Volkswagen Polo puts out about the same amount of power as this car. But the way it delivers its torque is of greater note. You must understand that in an E-Class, the goal here is to drive comfortably, to sort of waft from one location to another. And this engine allows you to waft like that rather well. The strong, healthy serving of torque means that when you put your foot down, it picks up speed very gradually and very gracefully, but before you know it, you'll be doing illegal speeds. And what also aids with that is the fact this car is very, very well insulated. You do get a little bit of road noise, but you don't get any wind noise whatsoever. And as a result, this is a very comfortable place to be in, particularly if you're driving over longer distances or over longer periods. This is also aided by the fact that the steering wheel of this car is also very light, which makes it very easy for you to maneuver this car in town, but it does weight up quite naturally out on the motorway. It also helps that this car is also very efficient. In addition to coming with several drive modes, including Eco, this car also comes with a very proactive start-stop system, which I must admit works rather smoothly. It cuts the engine out when you're coasting to a stop, and it turns it back on again with just a tap of the throttle. In Eco mode also, this car has a coasting function, which I believe works together with the camera, because when you're off the throttle and you're cruising at relatively higher speeds, it will actually disengage the gearbox in order to allow you to sort of glide along. But the reason why I say I think it works with the camera is because as soon as a vehicle comes into your path, or if you get close enough to the vehicle in front of you, it actually re-engages the gear as if to slow you down. I'm not sure if that's intentional, or I'm not sure if that's just me, or if it's just been coincidental, but that is what this car's been appearing to do, which I must admit is quite fancy. Now, of course, talking about a Mercedes-Benz means, especially a modern Mercedes-Benz, means talking about this interior. And it must be said though, because this driving experience is very relaxing, this interior also sort of helps kind of build upon that idea of serenity and calm. The 64 color ambient lighting system in here, the relatively good non-name brand audio system in this car, and these very comfortable seats with both lumbar support as well as lower thigh adjustment means that you can get very comfortable in this car. Sitting in the back also is a relatively comfortable experience, though admittedly the lack of rear aircon controls and the lack of B-pillar aircon vents does detract from the overall sense of calm and tranquility somewhat. It would be better if it had those things, and of course it would also be better if it had powered sun blinds, but unfortunately the powered sun blind is limited only to the rear windscreen. The two rear windows have blinds, but they are manual, which means you have to put them up yourself very slovenly. But that said, this car is incredibly comfortable. Build quality in here is also excellent, with no rattles or squeaks whatsoever throughout the 4 or 5 days we've had this car, and overall it's been a very positive experience. But I believe that there is a need to talk about some of the negatives. Number one, this brushed aluminium trim that they've used on the doors as well as the dash does not look quite as posh as you would expect for a car at this price point. Additionally, the silver trim is one thing, but because this car doesn't have the Burmester audio system, the speaker grills that they put up on the door cards, this plain black speaker grill, looks very low rent. It's almost there as if to remind you that you could have sprung for the E200, but you chose not to. And then, of course, there is the matter of the new steering wheel. Now, the steering wheel in the previous, or rather the pre-facelift E-Class, was perfect. It had 2 touchpads and everything else was a physical button, except for the volume that was actually a roller, and then the cruise control button that was like a rocker switch, also in the same sort of design to make everything look symmetrical, and that was a perfectly designed steering wheel. Now, however, for the facelift, they have a steering wheel full of capacitive touch buttons, and I have to say that they are very annoying. For starters, the touchpads are now sort of angled, which means to swipe up, you don't sort of go up, you have to swipe it at the same angle as the touchpad, which is very irritating. On top of that, in order to adjust your cruising speed as well as to adjust your volume, you now have to slide your finger up and down. And the thing is, there's just not enough tactile feedback from the steering wheel to tell me that my input has been selected. So when I'm trying to adjust the cruise control, my eyes are fixated to the top of the instrument cluster in order to tell me whether or not I've actually adjusted the cruise control. This, I believe, is a step backwards. Like I said, the previous pre-facelift steering wheel was perfect. There was no need to change it. This new steering wheel is bloody annoying. And of course, the last thing is safety. Now, Yes, admittedly, this car does come with autonomous emergency braking and blind spot monitoring, but at this price point, that is simply not enough. Mercedes-Benz Malaysia has chosen to save the full level 2 semi-autonomy, like the adaptive cruise control, the lane keep assist and so on, for the E300 AMG line, which we are very excited to sample. But what that means is that this E200 misses out on a lot of features that I believe are now becoming standard across the range. Earlier this week, as in the week that we're testing this car, Produa launched the new Myvi, which comes with level 2 semi-autonomy at just under 60,000 ringgit. So for a car in excess of 400,000 ringgit to not come with any level of level 2 semi-autonomy is quite embarrassing, I believe. Now, of course, Mercedes-Benz will justify this by saying that E200 buyers do not care about this sort of thing. E200 buyers are more concerned with ride comfort and MVH rather than active safety. And they may very well be right, but it just looks bad. When I get into a car like this, I expect it to be able to waft me along. And the E200 does such a good job at wafting. And the fact that it will stop short of being able to drive me through a traffic jam is a little bit disappointing. I would expect that sort of convenience and that sort of capability, especially from a company that invented the motorcar, from a company that leads the future, where every new S-Class flagship previews the sort of safety features that we will eventually see in all cars. It's a little bit of a shame to not see that in the E200. But, you know, that said, the E200 is still a very, very nice car. This interior is very comfortable. It's so quiet and it's so cushy. Yes, this is not dynamic to drive, but it's not supposed to be. If you want a large saloon car that's fun to drive, buy a 5 Series or even a Jaguar XF for that matter. This is not about that. What this car does better than anything else in the segment is comfort. This car insulates you from the road, from the world outside, from noises, from care and concern. You can sit in here and simply enjoy the experience of being wafted along. It is truly lovely. But as I said earlier, there are certain things you need to consider. If you want something that's a little bit safer, for example, consider the Volvo S90. If you want something that's a bit more dynamic to drive, consider the BMW 5 Series or the Jaguar XF. But if you want something to waft you about in absolute comfort, then the Mercedes-Benz E-Class is certainly what you need to be looking out for. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. This has been our review of the new Mercedes-Benz E200 Avantgarde facelift. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe. Jangan bodoh.